Got it. I just cleared out some bandits, loaded up on loot, and now it's time to head to Karinis to sell it. But wait, what's happening? My head is spinning. My vision blurs. What the? Am I 2D now? At first, everything looks strange. Alien. What is this? Pixels? But as my eyes adjust, a familiar feeling creeps in. The rough, unwelcoming atmosphere. Wolves, simple, hungry, barely clinging to life, yet fully capable of tearing me apart. Strangers who don't treat me like a hero, who barely acknowledge my existence. This isn't just random realm. No, this place feels like something I've known before, like stepping back into the convict-filled mines I only just left behind. Welcome friends to Drova Forsaken Kin, a game that might not wear Gothic's 3D armor, but underneath it carries the same hardened soul. I know for some the blocky pixel art might be an instant turnoff, but if you're a fan of tough RPGs that respect you enough to not hold your hand, skipping this game would mean missing out on one of the last year's best hidden gems. When Piranha Bytes shut down, I was devastated. Yes, their recent games weren't as groundbreaking as their classics, but they were still doing something unique. Their worlds were dark, polished, and brutally immersive. They created true dark fantasy, where you weren't some chosen hero spoon-fed destiny. Well, except for Elex, where you kinda were. But just another person trying to survive in an uncaring world. Their games were brutal in the best way possible. Zones weren't locked behind artificial level caps or arbitrary quest progression, but by sheer danger. Stronger enemies patrolled these lands, and if you weren't strong enough, tough luck. Every fight was a real challenge, every victory a well-earned step forward, and by the time you did become the hero of the story, you felt like you had walked a long, hard road to get there. Drova carries the same philosophy. It understands the feel of Gothic-like games and embraces it. But where Gothic drops you into a world already deep in chaos, Drova starts with the mystery. Your homeland is dying. Crops won't grow, winters are unnaturally long, and everything is bleak. But there is hope. A crystal druids found speak of land of the gods, the paradise of Drova, where everything is vibrant and thriving, an Elysium. And this is where our story begins. Our protagonist, John Drova, is just a regular guy who stumbles upon a group of druids performing a ritual to escape the dying world. Our backstory is for us to decide, as is the norm with unnamed heroes in these games. This serves as the game's tutorial. It shows us the basics of movement, combat and dodging, but it also introduces something more. Special attacks and the attentive mode, where holding the right mouse button slows your movement but allows you to pierce through the fog and later uncover secrets hidden in the world. As you move forward with the druids, something, as expected, goes horribly wrong. We have to fight our way through some ghostly apparitions, and then one scary black-looking board transports us to the land of gods. And as soon as we arrive in Drova, we see that the druids who led us here are dead, and we're left holding a cryptic crystal. A magic doodad and the only thing tying us to the main quest. We're told to bring it to the druids of these lands, but from here that's about all the directions we're getting. The game stops holding your hand, and from this point on, we're on our own. And speaking of druids and rituals, Drova leans heavily into Celtic mythology. It can be seen in its world, its lore, and even its combat. And this is one of the Drova's biggest selling points. It's a rare gem in gaming, very few games explore Celtic mythology in any meaningful way. But here, it's woven into every part of the experience. Druids, animalistic gods, and ever-present struggle of man versus nature are not just part of the lore but fundamental to the world and its conflicts. This extends to the combat as well. Unlike traditional RPGs with mana pools that regenerate over time, Drova uses focus, a resource that isn't handed to you passively but earned through action. You gain focus by attacking and avoiding damage, reinforcing the idea that power in this world must be taken, not given. And even though this game has spells, getting access to them won't happen until at least the final third of the game, unless you're willing to shell out for expensive spell scrolls. And considering how focus is earned, Drova forces you to be battle mage at best, swinging your axe or sword between casting spells, never relying solely on magic to survive. This game hammers it in with the fact that even some druids you meet will be fighting melee with everyone on top of casting spells. At this point, our so-called hero is basically a hobo. No clothes, a half-rotten stick for a weapon, or, if we're really lucky, a rusty woodcutter's axe. And as is tradition for Gothic-inspired game, this means even the weakest enemies are a genuine threat. Rats? deadly in groups. A single wolf might as well be a boss fight. Survival in Drova doesn't start with grand battles, it starts with not dying to wildlife. As we stumble forward, we eventually meet a hunter. This is where the game delivers its first reality check. He takes one look at us and asks if we have any useful skills. Checking the skill panel, yep, empty. We admit our complete lack of expertise, and in return ask if place is truly legendary land of gods. The hunter just laughs. With the way you are now, he scoffs, your best bet is to go help the woodcutters. And so, much like any Gothic game, we begin our rise from absolute nobody by running errands and doing menial tasks, slowly proving ourselves useful to this world. These early hours are all about survival, scraping together some gear, and making connections. It will take you anywhere from 3 to 10 hours of gameplay before we're even considered worthy of joining a faction. And as any Gothic fan knows, factions are the single most important choice in the game, and Drova fully delivers on this front. The factions are exactly what you'd expect from a true Gothic successor. Distinct, immersive, and shaping your experience in a meaningful way. First, we have Nemeton, which controls the largest and most secure settlement in the game. At first glance they seem like the good guys, much like the paladins in Gothic 2. They uphold law and order, and aligning with them generally means a more structured experience. Of course, whether they truly have noble intentions, well, that's something you'll have to find out for yourself. Then, of course, there's Remnant's camp, where might makes right. Here there is no law, only strength. And if you've got a problem with someone, settle it with violence. If you're running from trouble in Nemeton, no worries, Remnants don't care. You can steal, extort, pressure people into giving up their belongings, and the camp is completely fine with it. Think of them like the mercenaries from Gothic 2, but with even less moral restrictions. Unlike Gothic 2, where certain skills were locked behind faction choices, Drova doesn't restrict your character development at all. No matter which camp you join, you can still become a mage, a warrior, or whatever hybrid build you prefer. The quest to unlock magic is actually the same for both factions, meaning you won't be punished mechanically for choosing one side over the other. That said, while the gameplay options remain open, the story unfolds in nearly identical way regardless of your choice. The main difference is how you get into the faction. Once you're in, the overarching narrative stays mostly the same, which may be a letdown for players expecting vastly different experiences based on the allegiance. However, you do get some different secondary quests, so at least there is that. What is also different is faction armors. While stats on those are identical, the fashion is not. And to be clear, faction is one of the very few ways how you can get a better armor. As is a staple of Gothic series, there is a big deal to be in a full plate as opposed to someone just wearing leather. And apart from some high level dungeons, faction is your only way how to get better. And you will need a better armor because as expected, Drova is a hard game. Arguably even more demanding than most Gothic titles. In Gothic, the biggest challenge early on was often wrestling with clunky controls. Once you got past that, you could abuse certain mechanics, like stun locking enemies into oblivion, as long as you were only fighting one at a time. Drova, on the other hand, gives you much broader combat system, but that complexity also means it requires more skill to master. For example, the attack system is deeper than simple button mashing. You have light and heavy attacks, and to perform a combo, you need to press the attack button with the correct timing. If you spam attack mindlessly, you'll miss the rhythm and lose your combo, making fights harder, especially in the chaos of battle. And then there is focus that I mentioned earlier. What I did not yet say is that it also depletes very fast once you're out of battle, so you need to be very aggressive and fast. And as soon as you have enough to use a special move, you should. Speaking of special moves, Drova gives you a wide arsenal of tools beyond just basic attacks. Depending on your skills and weapons, you can apply bleed to weaken enemies over time, use poison attacks that in this game they do not drain health, but they make your opponent slower, dash to reposition quickly, and even breathe fire. Yes, you can roleplay as another Dragonborn here. You can also carry 2 weapon sets, switching between them mid-combat. Each weapon type has its own skill tree, meaning you're not just boosting damage, but unlocking new abilities as well. For example, spears can unlock poison inflicting attacks, and axes gain additional combo moves. Drova's progression system follows the classic Gothic formula. I wonder if we should start calling these games Gothic-likes. As expected, you don't just level up and automatically unlock skills. Instead, you earn learning points, but you still need to find a trainer to actually learn new abilities. What is better here than in Gothic and in Risen is that you at least don't have to pay for it. While the early game skills are relatively easy to acquire, later ones not so much. Some of the most powerful skills require venturing into dangerous areas, completing side content, or finding hidden NPCs, willing to teach them. If you want to truly master the game, you'll need to explore, and that's where the Drova truly shines. The game heavily leans on player-driven discovery. Some of the best weapons, rarest alchemy ingredients, and most powerful enemies are tucked away, waiting to be found by those willing to stray off the beaten path. Speaking of alchemy, Drova isn't afraid to have fun with its references. One of the best examples is shouting mandrake roots, straight out of Harry Potter. If you try to harvest them without the right ear protection, well, let's just say you'll get the wrong treatment. By the way, I actually have a video on Harry Potter games on this channel if you're interested. The game's world is dense with unique places to explore, from enchanted forests to ancient ruins of long-lost civilizations. Every area has something to uncover. But what makes it even more impressive is how compact the world is. Instead of creating massive, empty open world, the developers focused on tight handcrafted environment where every location matters. The entire map, you can run from one end to another in under 10 minutes. Or even faster, depending on buffs. Because of how packed it is, it's always something interesting along the way. And speaking of buffs, food plays a huge role in Drova. Like most RPGs where food is just basic healing item, here it provides important bonuses. Not only does it enable health regeneration over time, but different meals also give specific effects. For example, my go-to was Farmer's Meal, a dish that boosts movement speed. In a late game, when you're constantly traveling across the map, this buff is invaluable, because you will be traveling a lot. While Drova offers some quick travel options via Traveling Merchant's card, the game still forces you to trek across the map countless times. And this is where some cracks start to show. The world itself is quite memorable, the places you visit stick with you. The characters, though, not so much. Drova takes an old-school approach to quest design, so there are no quest markers, no glowing icons telling you exactly where to go. Normally, this works great, it forces you to pay attention and figure things out for yourself. But sometimes, it's just frustrating. The game will tell you to find an NPC, let's say his name is Fred. Great, where the hell is Fred? With this pixelated look, most of them looked exactly the same for me. And without markers or proper guidance, you can end up wandering aimlessly, checking every town and settlement, hoping to stumble upon the right person. In some cases, it makes the quest feel immersive, like you're truly part of the world. In others, it's just pain in the ass. Despite that, the quests in these games are mostly great, if you don't count the ones of gather X of something. And some of the main story quests are even heartbreaking, especially after seeing the consequences of what you did. The game is quite new and deserves to be played, so I won't spoil the story for you. Suffice to say that while it's not BAFTA nominee, it has a good story and it's worth playing through at least once. So, in the end, is this game a great heir for Gothic series? I would say yes. While 2D pixel style might not be for everyone, its gameplay, atmosphere and feel fits exactly what Perine Bytes was known for, while adding and polishing a lot of the mechanics. In some places it even goes too far, like adding 5 encounters where some bandits try to lure you out of the safe place into the ambush in the most cliché ways possible. So if you're into RPGs that treat you like an adult and allow you to explore the world at your own pace, without the heroic weights of the main character, well, this game is certainly for you.